Hey guys, welcome to my Samoan language instruction on auxiliary verbs. So I have the definition of an auxiliary verb here up on my computer, and that says a verb used in forming the tenses, moods, and voices of other verbs. So these are kind of sentences that have two verbs, and one is kind of helping form the mood or the voice of another verb, okay? So basically you're trying to link the two together, and that's what an auxiliary verb is, okay? So these types of verbs are called auxiliaries because they are used in addition to the main predicate of the sentence. So the main predicate, we've talked about that in our other sentence structures, or that's kind of like the main point of the sentence. So when I have an additional verb here that I need to connect it with, in all cases, the word ona comes between the auxiliary and the main predicate. So I'll have an auxiliary right here, and then my ona will come in between that and the main predicate. Okay? So you'll know that I have that pattern written right here. So I have an auxiliary, then I have an ona, then I have a predicate phrase. That is what the pattern of all auxiliaries are. Okay? The difference is there's three different types of auxiliaries, and the difference is this sentence right here, okay? So the placement of the subject changes depending on the kind of auxiliary verb. So I don't want you to worry about that too much just yet. What I do want you to worry about is I'll have an auxiliary verb, then an ona, then a predicate phrase. So here's some example sentences. So I have this can, that's a verb, but that's an auxiliary verb, and I have a normal verb, which is go. And so can will be my auxiliary that starts off. If I'm following my sentence structure, it'll go right here. So the can will go here, okay? Then my ona will go next, and so you see that. And then my normal verb, or the predicate, the thing that starts off my predicate, will be a verb in most cases, and that'll be alu, okay? So if I do the same thing with all these other ones, it'll be the exact same. So I can take an auxiliary, which is must, okay, and then go is my normal. In Samoan, the way that I do that is I take must, which is tatau, and then I have an ona that separates the two, and an alu, okay? You can do the same thing for these other two. Forget to come. So ngalo is forget. That is right here, okay? And then the ona separates the two, and come is here, okay? So ngalo onosau is forget to come. This one's a little bit different. This one's an adverb. So my verb in this case is gone, okay? So gone is my verb, and then an adverb, or a thing that's modifying the amount of time being gone, or expressing the amount of time being gone, okay, is long time. So long time is leva right here, and gone or go is alu, okay? So that's kind of how you picture it. It's usually verbs, but like you saw in our last example, sometimes adverbs that can't really function in the same area as some of our other adverbs that we've worked on prior to this video. So we'll go over that. I have I think a comprehensive list of all of the verbs and adverbs that you'll need for auxiliaries and when to use ona, at least to the best of my knowledge. Okay, so for example, well, let's just go on. So the first kind of auxiliary, the structure one, is the stative. Okay, so this is the most common. And rating, the most common type of auxiliary have descriptive pronouns appear before the main predicate, or an emphatic pronoun / subject come after the main predicate. So what this is saying is, I have my auxiliary here, okay? And what it says is I have a descriptive pronoun that comes before the main predicate. So I'll have an ona, and then I'll have a descriptive pronoun. So I guess I could put pluses before that. And my descriptive pronoun will come here, and then I'll have my predicate phrase, okay? So that's one way that it could work. Or if I'm using emphatic pronouns or another type of subject other than a descriptive pronoun, then it's going to be auxiliary here, then I have an ona again, and then I have my predicate phrase, okay? And then I have an emphatic pronoun. That could happen, emphatic pronoun, or the emphatic could be switched with just the name of whoever is the doer. So I'm just going to put doer there instead of subject because it's shorter. Okay, so that's the two different ways that it normally goes. These are the main ways that you'll see auxiliary verbs, is one of those two different ways. So here's some examples of that in my table here. I have finished reading the book. You'll note that I have an auxiliary which is finished, okay? And that just starts off my sentence right here, okay? Then after that, I have an ona that separates my main predicate from the auxiliary. And then we're going with the first rule here. We're using a descriptive pronoun in this case. So that descriptive pronoun appears before the main predicate. So then that's what follows. That's the thing that goes next. So I have an O right there. And then my predicate phrase will be reading the book. And that'll be Faitauina Lena Tusi. Okay? So that is one way. And another way would be kind of like the adverb that we were talking about. It's been a long time since the boat went, or the boat has been gone a long time. So my verb here is gone, but then the thing that's describing that is long time. So that's going to act as my auxiliary in this. So ualeva is going to act as the auxiliary. Then I have an ona that's separating the two. And I don't really have a subject in this case. I do have an object, and I have a verb. My verb is going to be the go, okay, so, or gone, so that is alu right here in that case, so those two kind of link. And the direct object, the thing that's going, is the boat, so I'm going to use a different color there, so boat is my direct object, and that comes after the predicate, okay? So I hope those two examples helped. And if not, I encourage you to pause the video and go back and rewatch whatever you need to. Okay, so I am, like I said, I'm not a very big fan of memorizing, but these are the verbs, the stative verbs that you have to memorize, and these are all auxiliary verbs that you need to follow the stative rule that we were talking about. So I encourage you to pause the video and to memorize these, and then also to look at the very right column of this table that has both the English and Samoan translations of an example. I'm a very big advocate of examples, so that is what I would ask of you, is to pause the video at this point. But before you pause the video, this ow right here has an asterisk. Sometimes instead of an ona, when we have ow, we can use ina. So we can use a ow ona, but most cases you'll see ina follow ow instead of ona. Okay, so pause the video and memorize these. Okay, also, so that's one thing that you're going to have to memorize. Then there's also some adverbs, like I was talking before, that you're going to have to memorize. So these are also some adverbs that can act as auxiliaries, and these give special emphasis to the manner, or they can show the frequency of something that occurs. Okay, so these are things like how, like this, thus. So I encourage you again to pause this. Okay, so pause this. I hope you paused it, and I hope you memorized this, and I hope you looked at the example sentences on the right. Okay, and this is the last part of the adverbs that you'll have to memorize for the stative adverbs, or sorry, the stative auxiliary verbs, or adverbs in that case. And don't worry, guys, the next two examples won't have this many things to memorize. So the first one that we've been talking about is the stative, and this has by far the most amount of adverbs and verbs that you have to memorize that are auxiliary, but they're the most often used too. So it will help you and it will benefit you because you'll see these a lot. You'll see sentences that have more than one verb in them all the time, just like we do in English. So memorize these. Muli muli, that's last. The one thing that I will say about this is fa'alua, that means twice. If I change that lua with any number, then that just means I'm making it 3 times. Okay, so like for example, if I put a tolu right there, so if I said fa'atolu, that would mean 3 times, okay, and 4 times. And so basically you're just saying once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and that's the way that works there. Okay, so memorize these, like I said, and we'll be moving on. So I pause the video and memorize these. Okay, so for stative auxiliaries, just a review, we have descriptive pronouns, subjects that come prior to the predicate. Okay, so I put those before my main predicate. So I have an auxiliary, ona, and then I put the descriptive pronoun, and then I put the predicate. Whereas with emphatic pronouns or other kinds of subjects and doers, okay, so emphatic pronouns or other kinds of subjects and doers, they come after the predicate, okay? So that's kind of a review, and here's some additional sentences that I have for you, and I'm not going to go over translating these, but I do encourage you to look over these and see why I wrote them out the way I did. Okay, so moving on to our second case, the second structure are irregular. So we're talking about the verbs ngalo and tatao in this, and these follow the same patterns as stative auxiliaries, okay? But there is an addition, the subjects may become, so I'm reading here, subjects may become the object of the preposition. So the preposition that might occur is these things, so I, ya, or yate, and they may immediately follow the auxiliary itself. So in this case, when I have ngalo and tatao, I can have it these two ways, and that's the pattern that we learned in our last kind of way, where I have an auxiliary, which is a tatao, and then I have an ona that separates that. And then I have my descriptive pronoun that goes before my predicate, okay, right there, I'll just underline it. And then my predicate will go next, which is alu. Or if I'm using a emphatic way, then I'll have my auxiliary right there, then the ona comes next. And then I have my predicate, and the emphatic pronoun comes after. And you could also say, like, the name of someone there. You can replace it with other kinds of subjects and doers, okay? But then the third way is kind of the new way that we're talking about, and basically what I'm saying is you can put the subject in this before I put ona. That's what I'm saying. So I have my a tatao here, which is my auxiliary, and then these two verbs, ngalo and tatao, if I'm using one of those, okay, which you won't see until later on in the sentence, but, I'm seeing tatao right now. So because I'm seeing tatao, I can also make my subject come immediately after that, and I use a prepositional phrase right there. And I use the necessary prepositional phrase. If I have a singular pronoun right there, then I use yate. If I have a dual, then it'll be ya, or a plural pronoun, it'll be ya as well. And you'll see e in other cases as well. But basically what I'm saying is you can see the form of this I must go in this third example, where you see the auxiliary verb, and then immediately follow that will be a preposition that has a subject attached to it, and then after that, then I'll have the ona, which then has the predicate. Okay? So basically, it's a weird way of thinking about it. I don't really typically like this way. I like just keeping it to the two that we've talked about before. But what I do want you to realize is that you will see sentences like this with ngalo and tatao. You can say the ones above the two that we're talking about, above the highlighted phrase or sentence. And that's what I normally do. I just keep it simple and I stick to these two. But you also need to be able to understand that this third one, or the highlighted sentence, is an equivalent. So basically, consequently, I must go can be translated 3 different ways. And again, here at the bottom I have some more example sentences. I'm not going to go over all of those, but this kind of has 2 different ways right here. This everyone should pray, that I kind of showed you that you can do it the way that we were talking about before, as in the stative way, or you can do it in the weird irregular way here on the bottom, where you put a prepositional phrase right here right after the auxiliary verb. Okay, So there's that, and I encourage you to pause the video at this point and go over whatever you need to, again, to be able to solidify this knowledge. So moving on to our third and final, this is transitive. Transitive auxiliaries follow the same rules as stative auxiliaries. So I can do the same thing with these verbs as I did with the very first kind of structure, but transitive auxiliaries can have the subject immediately come before or follow the auxiliary itself. These auxiliaries include mafai, taumafai, and amata. So when I use mafai, taumafai, and amata, I can use the same rules that I learned with the stative, or I can put it before or after my auxiliary. So as you noted, I have transitive auxiliaries can have the subject immediately come before or follow the auxiliary itself. So we had an auxiliary thing right here, and then we had an ona, sorry, that should be a plus, and then I had a predicate phrase, right? Well, if you stuck to the stative, you'd have that one down. But the new ways is if I put a descriptive pronoun, then this descriptive pronoun comes before this auxiliary, okay? And if I put an emphatic or another type of subject, then that will come up right after the auxiliary, and that'll come here, emphatic slash other type of subject, okay? So that, you can't see that R, but I'll rewrite that real quick. Well, can't see it again, but you know what I'm saying. So basically, I hope that helps. So basically, let's just go over this table really quick. So I can be translated 4 different ways. And these 2 on the top are the ones that I like to use the most because they're the stative way, the ones that we learned how to do it the first way. So e mawhai ona o alu. So I have my descriptive pronoun go before the predicate phrase. And then e mawhai ona alu a'u, which has my emphatic pronoun that comes right after the predicate phrase. But then these are the 2 new additional ways you can do it. So e mawhai e a'u ona alu. Okay, so that's one way that we can do it. That's a new way. And basically the reason why this is a new way is because this e a'u comes immediately after my auxiliary verb, and then if I have the descriptive pronoun, it'll come immediately before my auxiliary verb, like this, ote mawhai, and then ona alu. Okay, so like we said, it's always going to be an auxiliary, then an ona, then a predicate phrase. It just depends on what kind of auxiliary verb or adverb you're using. Okay, and that tells you where the subject goes. Okay, so here is what I want to just kind of end up and wrap up this video with is in the third example on the last slide, e mawhai e a'u ona alu. Okay, so we're talking about this thing right here that we were talking about. Okay, and so that sentence shows why these auxiliaries are called transitive auxiliaries, because like transitive verbs, you can mark the doer with an e for emphatic pronouns. So if I want to do e mawhai and then immediately use an emphatic pronoun right after the auxiliary, because normally, like what we did before, we did e mawhai ona, and then I did the doer, and then I did the predicate phrase, or I did the predicate phrase and then the doer, okay? But if I want to do the doer or the subject immediately after the auxiliary like such, then I have to mark the doer with an e, just like I did with transitive sentence structures, okay? Or I could also do the descriptive that come before my auxiliary, okay? But in this case right here, when I'm doing the doer immediately after the auxiliary verb, when I do the subject or doer immediately after the auxiliary like this, okay? And this has to be for mawhai, taumafai, and amata, then I have to mark that doer with an e, okay? I have to mark the doer with an e for emphatic pronouns, just like I did with the emphatic sentence structure. So here's a little recap for transitive auxiliaries. These first 2 are the exact same as the stative, and then the 3 and 4 are what we're going to be working on. So if 1 and 2, if you want to review those, pause the video and read those. Those are the same as the stative. 3 and 4 are the new ones though, so the new way that you could do it with taumafai, mafai, and amata is descriptive pronouns, subjects may come before the auxiliary. So this is descriptive pronouns come before the auxiliary, Or I could have emphatic pronouns or other types of subjects, other kinds of subjects and doers, and I mark those with an E that come after the auxiliary itself, okay? So that is a little bit of a review on what we've been talking about. And I know that this video has been really dense. There's a lot of concepts that I'm throwing at you, and that's why I encourage you to rewatch this video multiple times and to kind of go over the example sentences. Try to see if you can put together the English sentence into the correct Samoan sentence without looking, and then look afterwards. So I encourage you, again, to review this multiple times. This is not an easy concept to just learn one time. And I also encourage you, as you're reading and talking and listening, that you notice when these onas come up. And those onas mean auxiliaries, and that usually means there's going to be more than one verb in the sentence, and you got to connect this verb somehow. There's also certain adverbs, and those are in the video that you need to memorize, that also act as auxiliaries. So, like I said, guys, review this, get to become familiar with this, the way that you talk and speak and listen, and know when to use these, okay? So I encourage you to really work on this real hard, and until next time, guys, tofa soifua.